and welcome to the Daily Space Weather. We've got massive series of sunspot groups setting here in the northwest. We've got some new sunspots forming and rising in the southeast. Also a huge well-defined coronal hole there down in the lower right of your screen. We'll also show some coronal mass ejection activity. And a lot more on today's Daily Space Weather video. There'll be some meteorology indeed as well. So thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network. Least busted name in news. Here's the closest star in SDO intensitygram. Again, we've got two new sunspots down here. Some possible activity rising up here in the northeast as well. Here's your colorized magnetogram. And it looks like we have a volcanic uptick as well. We'll get to that in just a moment. First, help us out with clicks by visiting our links. Smashomash.com is our homepage. And welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. Despite the pathetic and putrid censorship on big tech platforms, we've been making these videos for pushing 6 years now. It's only the most detailed space weather imagery you'll see, and the most comprehensive data analysis anywhere of space weather. One of our links you'll find on the homepage is the link to Hemp Lucid as the Black Friday sale continues. So lots of products available there. Also, enter the promo code SMASHOMASH10 to save on checkout. Check that out. Lots of products available there, including gummies, body balms, lip balms, and lots more. If you want to subscribe to the channel via our subscription services site, become a member of the Smash Team at smashomash.com/Smash Team. You'll also find our links here on the Smash Team page. One of the links you'll find there is the link to ShoreMed, which is an association membership with the American Better Health Organization, an organization focused on improving the health of its members. It's probably improved my health and increased the probability that I would actually see a doctor, as it's pretty tough to get me to seek out medical attention of any kind if I'm not bleeding out. It's unlikely that I'll be interested in taking your advice or your treatments. But in any case, just the doctors by phone service makes it all worth it. Also, virtual veterinarians, huge savings on prescriptions. I can be a personal attestation to that as well, as I saved about 80% on a prescription that I filled by presenting my ShoreMed card at a pharmacy back in June. Follow us on Twitter if you haven't yet done so. You'll see some stuff you don't see anyplace else. Twitter.com/SmashoMash is the URL. You'll find us all over the internet at Smashomash. We've created a massive web ring to assist people like you to connect with your friends and foes about space facts. Press like, press subscribe, press share. If you're viewing on YouTube, if you're viewing on BitChute, go subscribe over on YouTube. You're missing a bunch of the content. Like driving, riding, pro tips, do one thing, smashomash.org presents the sun, cosmology segments, and lots more on the channel. So check our playlists. If you haven't seen the other items on the playlists, please do so. And again, thanks to everybody who has pressed like, subscribe, share, etc., left comments. We read all the comments. We are unable to respond to every comment, but we do read them all. Today's featured product is Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera. And of course, I'm not only Smash-O-Mash, I'm also a client. Thanks for leaving a comment, Tinman 1057. And today I'm wearing Google defined. If you'd like the real definition of the word Google, since you're still using it as a verb, visit our merch shop. You'll find links below the video as well as on the homepage to that. No matter how bad things get, folks, please don't pole vault the caldera. It could be unhealthful. If you're visiting a volcanic caldera, leave your vault pole at home. But do bring our products if you're going to visit a caldera. There's no better volcanic tour wear than the Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera socks. Or perhaps a Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera miniskirt. Once again, thanks to everybody who's picked up merch over the years. Give Smash staff a raise, because she's shockingly underpaid for being our IT department and our social media manager. And let's get to volcanoes. We've got the Sierra del Fuoco lava flow happening here. That's part of Stromboli. A lava flow happening there at Stromboli. So a new lava flow happening there on the Aeolian Isles of Italy. Also a rising signal of volcanic tremor there. Perhaps a larger eruption fixing to happen at Stromboli. Shivaluch exploding on Kamchatka, producing a 12,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. It's a flight level 120, flight level 080 from Abiko, as Abiko is erupting. So a volcanic uptick it looks like here, folks. Sakurajima also erupted, producing an 8,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Don't pole vault the caldera. Suwanosejima exploding, flight level 070, 7,000-foot ash plume over the Ryukyu Islands. Semaru, Volcanian-style eruptions continue to take place there from the Zhongring Soloko crater. Gray ash plumes rose about 500 to 600 meters above the crater, throwing lava bombs in various directions. Also, Aoba on the Isle of Vanuatu has increased its sulfur dioxide emissions. Also, slight increase in seismic activity. The volcanic alert level remains at level 2 major unrest for the Vanuatu Aoba volcano. Taupo in New Zealand, also a seismic swarm occurring there. So volcanic uptick here. Lots of volcanoes showing up on the list. Volcanic alert level remains at 1 for Taupo. Popocatépetl also exploding, flight level 200. It's a 20,000-foot ash plume over central Mexico. Fuego exploding, flight level 160, 16,000-foot ash plume over Guatemala. Nevado de Ruiz exploding, flight level 230 over Colombia. Flight level 220 over Ecuador from Sangre. Flight level 150 over Ecuador from Revenador. And last but not least, Sabancaya in Peru exploding, 24,000-foot ash plume. Flight level 240. So seismic activity here has been calm over the past 24 hours. No major quakes. Let's scroll up the list. We've barely seen a 5 magnitude quake. I think there was one over a 5 magnitude, perhaps. There it is, south of Australia, there's one. Also South Sandwich Islands, only 3 minutes later. So the two largest quakes there in the world happening at totally different sides of the planet. Only 3 minutes apart, practically simultaneous in terms of seismic activity. A 5.0 south of Australia and a 5.2 at the South Sandwich Islands region. There was at least one earthquake-baited China. Okay, that 4.4 was baited China, probably of substandard quality. Okay, here's two more 5.5 plus magnitude quakes. There's a 5.5 at Indonesia that came in this morning at 6:01 Universal Time, and a 5.1 at Sumatra that came in at 9:22 this morning. And let's go back to space. So this composite here, this is 193 plus 171 angstroms. It's a great series of wavelengths to view filaments as well as coronal holes. So this composite, great at that. Fantastic imagery there from SDO. Huge well-defined coronal hole down here. 2 sunspots, one risen and one formed in the southeast, and massive sunspot groups setting in the northwest. Here are some close-ups of that. Good stuff. Likelihood of major solar flares is actually very high. Here are some new active regions rising here. Right behind that coronal hole. And the 10.7 centimeter radial flux now at 134 solar flux units. There's the 1 year graph of the radial flux. The black line represents the 10.7. The F107, as it's sometimes referred, the 10.7 centimeter radial flux. By the way, that's in solar flux units, and a solar flux unit is 10,000 joules of radial flux density. Next, space weather enthusiast dashboard here. No space weather storms or geomagnetic unrest forecasted by NOAA for the coming days. We'll talk more about coronal mass ejections a little bit later. And we've got a sputtering solar wind at the moment, so you're going to see some variations happening here in the geospace magnetosphere movie. This is depicting the last 4 hours modeled by the Space Weather Modeling Framework. And it is based on a lot of data, including solar wind data, magnetometers, electron flux, and more. That's your sputtering solar wind for the past 4 hours. And here are Earth's ground magnetic perturbations, Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Geospace delta B means changes to Earth's B field. The units depicted here are nanotesla, magnetic flux density. What the magnetic flux is wrong with you? No, civilization's not ending. No, it's not a grand solar minimum. Grand solar minimum are characterized by slim to no sunspots, and we see lots of sunspots. Next, KP index here at 0 for the past 6 hours. Yowzers, KP 0. It's a very geomagnetically calm condition. And let's go to the real-time solar wind. So here you can see the sputtering of the solar wind here. Densities varying between 1 and 4 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed varying between 450 and 350 kilometers per second. You can also see changes happening here in the solar wind temperature. That's the bottom pane, making it look more legit. It is a legit sputtering solar wind. Keep in mind that is measured at Lagrange point 1, about 1 million miles from Earth, well outside Earth's magnetosphere. Next, there goes magnetometers, which are measuring inside the Earth's magnetosphere. Those are located at about 22,500 miles of altitude. That goes 16 and goes 17, and they're geosynchronous near equatorial orbits. And we're seeing fairly smooth readings from those. No surprise there. Let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet next. We've got to refresh it. There we go. We are still seeing the north solar polar field hanging out at the north heliographic polar region. It's still not left the North Pole, folks. So we're still waiting to see that migration continue. And until we see that leave the pole, there is still lots of solar cycle to go. It's got to make its way all the way to the South Pole. Here's our line of sight field plot. The sun's B field here depicted in blue. Solar polar fields in red for south and green for north. And let's move to coronal holes, since we've got a very well-defined South Pole-oriented coronal hole there in the southeast. Those usually stay refreshed for us, but there we go. There's your South Pole-oriented coronal hole there, very well-defined. And it may not produce any major effects. Probably have some increase in solar wind speed and density there for a brief moment. It is very far to the south, though. It could miss the Earth entirely. And let's move to our view from SDO. So keep in mind the Earth is not located there, folks. That is just for scale. And let's move to sunspots. We will have 2 named groups, as one has formed and one has risen in the southeast. So this is the larger one. I believe it's only alpha class. This one down here is a little smaller. I believe it's beta class at the moment. We'll show you a high-res image of that toward the end of the video before the meteorology segment. Likelihood of major solar flares very, very high here. As you can see, the flare probability above 50% there. Possibility for an X-class flare there rising above 61% during the past day or so. It's all because of the setting of sunspot 3140 and sunspot 3141. Don't get solar flares and coronal mass ejections confused, folks. Solar flares are photons. That is X-rays. Coronal mass ejections are protons, mostly hydrogen. Also helium, electrons, and other elements. Here's your SDO magnetogram. And those sunspots have been largely stable here for the past 24. A little bit of umbral migration there with respect to each other. It might be a little bit more obvious in the intensitygram view, and don't worry. We indeed have a close-up of that. So first, these two groups down here. This is a beta gamma class sunspot group. This group up here just kind of rose. It probably went all the way around the sun. It's getting a new name today. But the big story is these couple of groups up here. Sunspot 3140, sunspot 3141. Remember, the likelihood of major flares is higher as sunspots set on the limb. No energetic particles here. Nothing in the solar proton flux. The GOES proton flux there, measured by the GOES 16. It's been flatlined for a long time, and the X-ray profile has come up as forecasted. No major flares over the past 24 hours. There's only one M-class flare in the past 3 days. Again, don't be surprised to see an X-class flare. So here's 94 angstroms, one of the better wavelengths through which to view solar flares. Again, you can see this active region rising here in the northeast as well. That, my friends, looks nothing like a grand solar minimum. That is a bunch of large sunspots as opposed to zero sunspots. Continuing on to our star chart. If you want to make your own, head to in-the-sky.org. But this is what the sky would look like above Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, if we could see it. It is way too cloudy as Cygnus swipes across the northern polar region. The moon is high in the sky. Mars is in a setting mode. The blue line is the galactic plane. The yellow line is the ecliptic. And let's take a solar system forecast. So we're about 8 days from a new moon. Here's your 1 week forecast for the solar system as Mercury and Venus swing around to leave their retrograde motion. Here's where things will be in a week. And let's take a look at some coronagraphs. So this is yesterday from George Mason University. And we don't appear to have any Earth-directed coronal mass ejections from that data. Here is today's imagery. Another 36 frames for you. No CMEs apparently headed toward the Earth. Let's verify that by looking at stereo A and the Soho-Lasco C3. For some reason, folks, YouTube channels want you to be frightened when there are low numbers of sunspots and when there are large numbers of sunspots. Coronal holes are scary, sunspots are scary, everything's so scary, except the only problem is that the sun's not going to kill you. The galactic core is not powering the sun in any way, and the universe is not electric. So I don't know what else to tell you. I guess I should probably make a cosmology segment about cosmology nonsense, since there is so much cosmology nonsense on certain YouTube channels. So yeah, no Earth-directed CMEs. If there were, you would see one headed off in this direction from the perspective of stereo A. But you don't. So let's zoom out. Here is SDO 304 angstroms plus Soho-Lasco C2, that's the red, and Soho-Lasco C3, which is the blue. And we'll zoom out even farther here. There's the full zoom view. And you're going to see Mercury and Venus kind of slow down there and then fall in, moving with the rest of those background stars as they leave their retrograde motion. Astrologers can stop freaking out about 2 planets in retrograde. Oh, noes! Oh, my God. Retrograde planets. Oh, noes. I've got to sell my house and move to a bunker. All right, so here we go. We've got massive filaments here. Massive filaments. Likelihood of coronal mass ejections remains nearly 100%. Likelihood of major solar flares over 50%. So lots of stuff going on here. It might seem like low levels of solar activity. It's not really at all. Look at all those dark absorption features. And this filament down here looking like it's become unstable just in the past few hours. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll be streaming it on twitch.tv/smashomash. If you haven't installed the mobile app, install the mobile app for Twitch. Twitch.tv/smashomash. If you're viewing on a desktop, you can probably visit a URL. I'll bet you're able to do that. You can probably type in your browser window, twitch.tv/smashomash, and view the channel. It's also hosted on the Smash Team site at smashomash.com/smashteam. That's the last 24 and 171 angstroms, the house favorite wavelength. And let's take a look at the GOES 16 SUVi. This is what we choose to stream most days on Twitch. Just in case any major events happen, we prefer to catch them. We've caught massive prominences and X-class flares and all kinds of other fun, exciting things going on the closest star. Thanks for stargazing with us. It's time to move into our bonus feature segment. That's about the last 2.5 hours from the wide field of view from the GOES 16 SUVi. Charging hazards are non-existent here at the moment. It's a smooth sailing environment for satellites. The GOES electron flux there, the greater than or equal to 2 mega electron volt electron flux, is just in nominal levels here. There's the forecast by NOAA. Looks like we're just going to stick with nominal levels here for the coming days, assuming nothing suddenly changes. And there is the 1-year graph. To put it in context, let's take a look at the F layer of the ionosphere. Since we're doing bonus features, let's see what's going on at the bridge between Earth and space. We're seeing major ionosphere anomalies here, some big-time low-frequency anomalies in the northern hemisphere. If it's not obvious on the raw data here, the vibrational frequency gram, we will show you the anomaly gram. That will clear things up. Major low-frequency anomalies happening over places like Europe. So check it out. Also Northern Africa, seeing some major low-frequency anomalies. The Caribbean, Southern North America. Also India. Places like Vietnam and Malaysia. So some major low-frequency anomalies happening there, primarily in the Northern Hemisphere. The Middle East seeing some major low-frequency anomalies overhead. And let's bring up the latest image. There is 11:30 Universal Time ionogram and 11:45 Universal Time anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. Continuing on, we're going to show the total electron content forecast. It is the free electrons between your GPS satellite and your handset. That satellite located about 12,500 miles of altitude. It's on the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt. And here are the free electrons up to about that altitude. That's the total electron content over North America. Here's the standard deviation. And we'll show anomaly from the 10-day average. Low electron anomalies happening primarily there. I'll let that play through a second time. So anomalies on the low side there over parts of North America. Continuing on to our latest total electron content map. That's from the Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology, by the way. The same organization that we get the ionosphere movies from. Here's your total electron content at the moment. And here's the latest intensity gram and latest magnetogram. So let's take a look at these active regions rising first. There you go. That's a beta gamma class sunspot. This one here is alpha class so far. I only see one polarity umbra there. It is South Pole oriented. Up here we've got some activity rising. That does appear to be a new sunspot. So we'll have at least 3 named sunspot groups today, folks. Pretty sure that is indeed an umbra. And of course, let's take one final look at this group. Oops, there we go. There is the rockback. Lots and lots of magnetic complexity there. Let us know in the comments if you think an X-class flare is coming. There are still about at least two more days that we could expect to see major flares from that sunspot group. Don't be surprised one bit to see that come to fruition. Next, we'll show some composite imagery here before we shift to meteorology. And once again, thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network Least Busted Name and News. Thanks for leaving a comment, Mike. So what we're looking at here is significant wave height. I'm a wave chaser. And at the moment, I think the largest waves in the world are down here in the Southern Ocean. Not very surf-worthy, although we do have some big waves up here as well. And nearly 25-footers up there. 25-footers up there. So the seas are pretty calm here at the moment. No 30-plus foot waves. And let's take a look at the surface winds. So there are the surface winds for the eastern world. Jet streams looking like this. And if you want to be a pro weather forecaster, use the jet stream. The jet stream will allow you to make all kinds of estimations. For example, right here, a great example of cold air meridionally blowing to the south. In other words, you could expect cold temperatures down in those areas as that Canadian air blows deep into the U.S. Surface winds of the western world are looking like this. Very large low pressure system here in the North Pacific. Not super strong, just super large. A more concentrated one here in the North Atlantic. Next, surface winds of the central world. Jet streams of the central world. And let's take a look at the clouds and fog over the Americas. This is shortwave radiation, 3.9 nanometers is the wavelength. That'll show clouds and fog even at nighttime, since water vapor, a real greenhouse gas, emits radiation. Moving right along to our weather.gov map, we've got a bunch of winter weather warnings, including winter storm warnings in northern Maine. If your county is lit, click your county. We'll briefly show the key. Weather.gov is the site that we're using, weather.gov. If your county's lit, click your county. Let's continue on to some forecasts. So here's the 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast. A bunch of snow and some ice showing up in New England here. Ice storm in New England. Don't drive in the freezing rain, folks. It'll make for bad times. Whoops. Driving in the freezing rain will make for bad times. Yes. Don't do it. Some heavy snow there forecasted for some portions of New England, especially northern Maine. Continuing on, here is our accumulated positive snow depth change forecast. Expecting over a foot of snow there in northern Maine. Also some large snowfall totals there, pushing 2 feet there in portions of New York there, near Lake Erie. Dag. Is that Oswego? Oswego, one of the highest snowfall total places in the whole country. That is like over 2 feet of snow forecasted for that little concentrated area there. Yowzers. Somebody's getting buried in November. That's your 72-hour positive snow depth change forecast in inches. And the Rockies are continuing to get snow. There's some Texas is going to have some snow. How about them apples? Also Oklahoma. We'll see an inch or so. Continuing on to our precipitation type. As the rain finally moves out of Pennsylvania here, let's give a forecast. This is the European forecast for precipitation type. That green is a bunch of wet snow, by the way. And it looks like a push of cold air here is going to snowify some of that precipitation. Here's Friday the 18th. As it continues to snow in Colorado and New Mexico. And last but not least, here is Saturday the 19th, your precipitation type based on the Euro model. And let's call it a day right there. Here's your lightning mapper. Heavy lightning there around Central America. Check it out. Right there. Some lightning just hanging out in the same location. Dag. And let's check for terrestrial strikes. No thunder rolling in any place in the U.S. at the moment. Although there is some lightning happening in the Mediterranean and off of the East Coast. Continuing on to our radar map. This is radar.weather.gov if you want to look at it yourself. And we'll be focusing on the lower 48. There's your U.S. Doppler radar. Here is your clouds and fog. Here is your water vapor. It's time to close this thing out. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. Here's your recap. Vertical motion of water droplets. 3.9 nanometer radiation showing clouds and fog. And last but not least, water vapor. Those are a bunch of facts about space and Earth. Thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Please support the channel via our links. Click smashomash.com. Check out some merch. Order some gifts from Hemp Lucid for your friends and foes. In the meantime, I'll have been your guest. I'll have been your host and your guest because, again, I'm not only Smash-O-Mash, but I'm also a client. And I'm signing off from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Opinions expressed in this video, not necessarily the opinions of Smash News Network, least busted name in news.